And welcome back, fellow adventurers, to Let's Play Dreamfall Chapters. And here begins what is effectively the epilogue of the game. Saga is now an old woman, and so we can assume that a very long time has passed since the previous chapter of the game. And this also kind of serves in a way as a thank you to the longtime fans because of the amount of mementos and last little pieces of trivia and information that show up around here. So if you have been a fan of the series, it actually behooves you to take a nice long look at everything that's now given in this room. Also, it does serve to bookend the series in a way, because the very first scene of the very first game took place in this very room, where Saga, we now know, instead of April, was the one who was telling the story of the longest journey. So let's start having a look around here.
One of my favorite worlds, vast and beautiful. It took me days to walk there, across treacherous song lines, avoiding discordants and bell strikers. I probably would never have gone unless I'd picked up those rumors about a Midgardian woman who suddenly appeared in the City of Three Moons. I was hoping I'd find her there, but the woman had left years before. I stayed a while. It was a wonderful place, but I grew bored, as I always do.
Indeed, we get the impression that Saga is essentially a traveler. That's her passion, is going around and seeing new places. And given her abilities to travel what are called song lines, as well as, I believe, she can make her own as well, really complements her passion to see new places. Also, she mentioned looking for a Midgardian woman. She was looking for her mother, I believe. Her mother is from a place called Midgar.
I prefer my worlds three-dimensional, thank you very much. I prefer my worlds three-dimensional, thank you very much.
That must have been quite the world to travel to if it wasn't in just 3 dimensions.
The dead walked in that world. They were exceedingly polite, but it still creeped me out no end. One of the Sylphan worlds, beautiful and peaceful as always, so naturally, I grew bored again.
And you almost might miss it, but right in between these 2 mementos is the Silver Spear of Goromon. Just sometimes it's a little tricky to get the cursor to go onto it. There you go. It's just called the stick.
One day, I'll get rid of that accursed thing. It's stained with the blood of dragons, but it's too dangerous to simply discard. The Silver Spear of Goromon, older than the Twin Worlds, forged in the fires of the First Earth, created for one purpose, the destruction of magic. Some days I use it as a walking staff. I don't much like holding it anymore. It's thick with the blood of dragons, and heavy with broken dreams.
Rather ominous thing to have in the house, but again, she does justify it by saying, she wouldn't want to set it somewhere and perhaps lose it or have someone with ill intentions get it.
One of my older works. I must have painted that when I was in my late teens. I won't mess with this one. but I think I'd like to revisit this particular scene in a painting. Perhaps something that goes further back, to the beginning of the journey. Dragons and dreams. Our bloodless king. He did not enjoy that throne, but he never complained. Not to me, at least. Even my endless teasing couldn't faze him. Oh, Kian, I miss you dearly. Not a day goes by when I don't think of you. My dearest Kian, I miss our long conversations. I even miss how every single one of my jokes passed over your head.
Yeah, I'll believe that. Kian doesn't have the most developed sense of humor. But as we see here, and of course as we saw in the previous cutscene as well, it does seem that at some point in the future when Kian returned, he was able to establish himself as king of the Azadi. I wonder if that means that he ended up displacing the 6 empresses, in which case this would mean he would be the first male ruler of the Azadi for probably quite some time. Interesting. And from what Saga was hinting at, after he established his kingship, it wasn't too long after that that the War of the Balance began, which would result in what is, in this time period, is now a single unified Earth, where Arcadia and Stark have indeed been rejoined together.
Not bad for a 7-year-old with no idea of what was happening to her and why she was having such vivid dreams. Arcadia, Crow, the Rolling Man, the beginning of a long, long journey.
It's one of her paintings of April.
I'll leave them up. After all, Papa isn't around to tell me to clean up and bring them to my room.
Here we have a picture of Zoe, I believe.
Brave Zoe. It couldn't have been easy getting caught up in events and wanting nothing more than a quiet, normal life. I believe her daughter is still alive in the continuity, along with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. From what I've heard, she lived a long and fulfilling life. And I know she passed the dream on, or all this wouldn't be.
Indeed. So from the hints that Saga was giving here, and the last cutscene that we saw of her, it does seem like she was able to return to what we would call a more normal life. We saw her pregnant and looking off screen to someone who seemed to be dear to her. And I suppose as a player, you are left to wonder whether that is Reza or someone else. After all, you do have the choice in the game to either get closer to Reza or to basically break up with him. So not seeing who she's talking to allows you to decide whether or not she was with Reza or with someone else. And apparently who she was pregnant with was a daughter. And Saga also hints that, of course, when we last saw Zoe in the game before the epilogue cutscenes, she was still interacting with Lux and the Undreaming. And I think actually the Undreaming's humanoid form, I believe, might be called something different, like Nox or something. Because it's kind of the opposite of Lux, which is light. We have Nox, which is darkness or night. But they seem to have been rejoined. Now, if they ended up being rejoined and still dwelling inside Zoe, then that would make sense for Saga saying that she passed on the dream. In other words, Zoe, for a while, carried the dream of the universe inside her, being a dreamer, as she was. But then at some point, she passed that on to someone else, probably so that she could live a more normal life. So all in all, Zoe seemed to have a happy ending as they go. And of course, this game's primary focus was to wrap up Zoe's arc. Because when it comes to April's and Kian's arcs, who are the two other main characters in the story, those are left much more open.
Hugsy. He's the only creature in this little world of ours older than me. I used to think he spoke to me. And I do believe I was right about that. There's a spirit inside him, old and shy. I think Mama put him there to watch over me when she was traveling.
Hugsy is kind of a parallel to Wonkers, Zoe's companion.
What's that, Hugsy? You miss Papa? I miss him too, old buddy. Oh, dear old Hugsy. You're barely holding together.
Let's see what else is around here. Still lots of bottles on the shelves, although we don't know if they're full or with anything or not. Chart of song lines. Looks really pretty.
Now that my life's winding down, I feel like I'm just beginning to understand song lines. But at least here they are, charted and documented. Someone may benefit from my experiences. Perhaps I'll take one final walk along a winding path and listen to the songs and stories. Perhaps when the spring between worlds thaws the frost on the turnstiles.
So apparently there are seasonal variations in the in-between areas between worlds.
I would so like to go, but not now. Not today.
You can see there are numbers there. Looks like it goes 1 through 12. Almost clock-like, it kind of seems to me. And all those lines join in the center. I'm going to guess that that center is the house. I don't know if the house is the only place in existence where all the song lines meet, or if it's just one node among many. But it would make sense that this chart would show the house at the center point because that's where it's located. We have both a picture of April and the, looks like, I believe, let's zoom in, yes, that is the Talisman of the Balance that April carried when she went into her final showdown with Gordon Holloway at the tower. Somehow it seems that Saga has recovered it. And a feather, it's a black feather, so I'm assuming it's from Crow. So it's kind of like a nice little altar to the memory of April here.
It's hard sometimes to separate my own memories from what I've read and heard. April's journeys are vivid to me, but also dreamlike. I've spent so many years trying to make sense of our connection. I don't think I ever will. She's a part of me, and she always will be. But how and why? That's a mystery.
Yep, so once again, we are unfortunately not left with any clear idea of what the true connection is between April and Saga. But again, she doesn't just describe it as, oh, I'm just April reincarnated, or I'm completely separate from April. There's this weird in-between state that she's in. that kind of binds her to April. So it's just simply left unexplained, mysterious, but there is some kind of connection between the two of them. It reminds me of how the dragons described their connection with April. That it wasn't a matter of blood, but there was some kind of other connection between the two of them.
Someday, at the very end, maybe we will meet face to face before the cycle begins anew.
Little foreshadowing there.
Someday, at the very end, this was April's. I'm not sure how that's possible or how it ended up here, but...
She doesn't know how the talisman got here either.
I feel her presence in this. I mean, I always feel her presence. That's inevitable. But there is something about this talisman. The beginning and the end will connect. They always do.
And as, again, we see that in the story itself, where beginnings and endings usually show up at the same place. Now, this makes me wonder about where April is, because the fact that this talisman makes Saga feel that April's presence is very strong and near, is her spirit or her energy somehow in that talisman? Not sure. I'm also not sure what the book is supposed to be, because everything else around here has to do, seemingly to do with April and Crow. And if I had to guess, it looks like the picture on that book is a picture of the Azadi goddess, I think. I don't know that for 100% certain. But it makes me wonder if April has some connection to the Azadi.
His feathers are a lot grayer these days, poor thing. He hates growing old even more than I do. Did I pluck it? He never sheds, or if he does, he hides it well. I'll leave it be.
She's talking about Crow in the present, as if he's alive. Now, on the one hand, he pretty much very distinctly remembers being killed by the Prophet. But in the last scene in Azadir, we saw that a small crow-like bird was sitting on Saga's shoulder. So while April is not, I don't believe the straightforward idea that Saga is just April reincarnated, it might be that Crow was actually somehow incarnated. Because the way that Saga talks to him just seems to suggest that a little bit more straightforwardly. And again, that's something that we're not told how it happened. That again would probably be something that we would see in the continuing or finishing of April's story. I'm pretty sure is where we would see that, if it ever comes to pass.
Thank the worlds I learned to play the guitar, or I might never have discovered the song lines. I'm too busy to call on the song lines tonight. But perhaps another day, when my legs don't hurt.
Looks pretty cold outside. I guess since there's seasons, it might be winter out there between worlds.
The complete history of the War of the Balance and the Reunification of Worlds. Volumes 1 to 13. I've yet to make it all the way through, I'm afraid. I helped Galath with the details while he was writing it. I was there to witness it all.
So Galath wrote this. Of course, it would be 13 volumes because of how important the number 13 is in the story.
That's a tale for another occasion.
This also, of course, kind of shows at the very beginning of the first game when Saga talking to some other people who have stopped by the house. They ask her to tell her the story of the balance, and she says how long of a story it is. And here you can kind of see it, because this is just the ending of the story of the balance when the worlds were reunited, and it itself is 13 volumes.
The twin worlds became one, and decades of strife and unrest followed. Many perished, but it had to be so. Magic and science could not be divided forever. I haven't been back in decades. No Earth reminds me too much of friends long gone. But maybe I'll pay one last visit to those who remain.
This is kind of fun. You can see that this kind of looks like the Earth that we know, but it's also different. You can see North America is passing by right now. Unfortunately, it looks like South America is displaced quite a lot off to the east. There's a huge lake now in the northwest United States. Central America seems to have gone under the waves. Land has appeared in the middle of the Atlantic. That might be Atlantis, for all we know. The British Isles are now reconnected, probably first time since the last ice age, with Europe. But Spain is gone. A huge amount of West Africa has appeared from the oceans, so it's a lot larger in that area. Mediterranean has shrunk. Let's see. Where the Gobi Desert used to be is now ocean. India looks more or less the same. Japan is now connected with the Eurasian continent. So I remember when I first saw this, I just let the globe kind of slowly roll for quite a while just to see what Ragnar Turnquist's version of the reunited Earth looked like. So that was kind of fun.
Worlds like that one are jarring. Everything just slightly off. It's like it was designed to keep me on edge, and I have such a hard time understanding post-physicals.
I'm going to guess that what she means by post-physicals are spirits, as in after the physical or after the body. Here we have, it looks like a tearing of one of the tapestries at the Resistance headquarters in Marcuria, showing the head of the White Dragon.
She came to me when I was a child. She spoke to me, comforted me. I believe we'll meet again. And maybe then the mysteries will become clear to me.
And so here we find that sure enough, the spirit that came to her when she was just a little baby was in fact the White Dragon. Now, again, what that means is that if my chronology is correct, and of course, with all these different worlds and timelines, who knows, but my understanding was that she came and talked to Saga as a baby only after April had perished and had been sent off in the boat. Kind of the Viking funeral. Now, if I remember correctly, that occurred after the prophet had killed the White Dragon's, at least her body, with the Spear of Goromon. So that would imply that the White Dragon is still in existence. And the fact that Saga believes that they'll meet again at some point also supports that. So while Brian Westhouse killed, or at least maybe thinks he killed the dragon, or maybe all the dragons, with the Spear of Goromon, it may be that the dragons themselves are not so easily killed. maybe the spear banishes them away from the world and at some point they can return. Who knows what the details are. But that just very strongly suggests to me that the dragons aren't actually, quote, dead and gone.
The Secret Lives of Stickman.
Characters from the first game.
Paths, ways, and songlines.
That makes sense that they would be here.
Time is a spiral.
I think some characters have said that more than once in the game. I wonder if that reflects Ragnar's own kind of philosophy about the universe. The idea of things happening again but never quite the same way is talking about time as a spiral.
Reincarnation for beginners.
Again, kind of teasing the audience about who's reincarnated and who isn't.
The House of All Worlds. My one and only book. And it is truly one book only.
That line both clearly says that Saga only wrote one book and it's about this place, which kind of speaks to its uniqueness also, because she hints that it is one book and one book only, aka there are no other versions in other universes with this house in it. This house is truly unique with a capital U. And so if she wrote that book in this place, then it would be the only version of that book in all existence.
The Secret Lives of Stickman.
Okay, that's all of the books.
I'll sit down and read later with a good cup of tea from a floating teacup.
Oh, a floating teacup, eh? We've seen that once before this game.
The people of Stark got a sneak peek of what reunification would be like with the collapse. For most, it was not a pleasant experience.
A little smaller version of the collapse memorial in Propast.
The people of Stark got a sneak peek of what reunification would be like with the collapse. For most, it was not a pleasant experience.
True, and given the fact that the reunification of the worlds happened during the War of the Balance, probably means it was not a very good time.
It's the comfy chair.
We'll be sitting there soon enough. Just want to make sure that I've seen all the other momentums around here. Almost done. A little picturesque scene here.
I had to visit Letok. I couldn't just let that mystery be. But the paths didn't lead me to them, all to that time, and I found nothing.
Again, it seemed like for a long time Saga had searched for both of her parents. Letok is where her father is from, I believe.
It was a beautiful place, though, and I left the memorial there for the two of them. Still so many worlds unvisited, so many universes left to traverse, but time's running out for me.
Perhaps an infinite number of universes, but Saga seems is not immortal.
I've kept track of all my travels over the years. The multiverse is big, but I haven't done too badly. I don't think many have walked as far and as wide as me. There. Oh, yes, I remember that place. And that strapping Coruscant farm boy. It was an enjoyable 2 weeks. Until his wife returned.
Oh, Saga was a homewrecker at some point.
I like to think Papa found Mama in the end. And that they lived out their lives together somewhere green and beautiful. Papa never gave up hope, no matter how hard I tried to convince him otherwise. If anyone deserved a happy ending, it was him. I miss you guys. So much. Why did you never come back to me, Mama? Were you really not able to find your way? Or did something else happen? Did you forget about us?
So this is kind of the altar to her parents. A picture of both of them, her mother's typewriter, and looks like her father's glasses.
I refuse to believe she stayed away on purpose. And I never really believed she was dead. She might have been lost in time, like Papa always said. That would explain why she couldn't make it back. I could never write as well as she did, so I stopped trying.
I wonder if she wrote her one book on this typewriter.
Oh, Papa, trying to keep me here with wards and old magic. I must have been such a handful for him, and a royal pain in the ass. He left his glasses when he packed his rucksack and walked out the front door. Where he was going, he didn't need spectacles. They wouldn't do me much good. Those wards are long gone.
All right, I think that mostly wraps everything up. Just look at a couple things here around the chair. You can see here there's these mats on the floor. This is where her audience was sitting when she started telling the story of April in the first game.
Rose loved to tinker with her creations. Now where did those dragonflies of hers go?
It's pretty well accepted among the fans that the Rose she's mentioning is the perhaps real name of Queenie, because she talks about dragonflies and floating teacups. And she's the only character that had both of those, so it makes a lot of sense.
I hadn't thought of Rose for nearly half a century. Where did she end up after reunification? She always spoke about going post-physical and being with her Alvin again.
Now, as far as I know, the only character named Alvin was Alvin Peets, who was the founder of Wadicorp, and unfortunately ended up as that big, green, bloated, monster-like thing who loved to eat dreams that Zoe met in the previous game, Dreamfall. And I think that originally my understanding was that there was going to be more story focused on what was going on with Wadicorp in terms of the politics of it, and that Queenie/Rose was involved in that somehow, but that it ended up getting cut basically for timing and budget reasons. They just weren't able to get into it.
I'll make some tea to go with the shortbread later, after my guest has left. I never could get rid of that old thing.
Sounds like Saga's expecting someone, a guest.
If I sit down, I don't know if I'll be able to get up again today.
Okay, I think everything is now done here as far as examining. So the first thing we'll do is we'll light the fireplace. Once again, we see that Saga has this affinity for fire. Can just summon it out of thin air. Oh, there's a tap on the window.
It's freezing out there. You should not have let me go outside. Brr.
You're a big boy. What imbalance were you thinking?
Fresh air. And I was going a bit stir-crazy inside.
You know very well it's not safe. Paths shift with the wind between worlds, and the song lines are fragile things at the best of times. One discord, and you could end up lost forever. Just like...
You worry too much, old woman.
Oh, old woman, huh? You're no spring chicken yourself, Bird.
Oh, Bird, me. I've survived worse. Anyway, time to dry my cold feathers by a roaring fire while I enjoy a saucer of sweet sherry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you. You can't.
What? I can't what?
Be here.
You're not serious. You're serious.
I'm receiving a visitor, and she mustn't see you. There'll be too many questions. Questions I can't easily answer.
And who, pray tell, is this very important visitor?
I will tell you. Afterwards. Go upstairs and warm yourself by the chimney. It won't be too long.
After all these years, I get no respect. No, don't say anything. It's fine. I'm going upstairs. Just don't expect me to come back down again later. Or ever.
I'm making shortbread.
Call me when it's ready.
We also see that looks like Saga has carved gaps above the doors here, and we see why. It's so that Crow can easily move around the house. That's really nice. All right. So I think everything is now done. We're just going to wait for her visitor. And if you're a longtime fan of The Longest Journey, as I was, you can, just like I did the first time, pretty much be rest assured who's about to come in and visit her.
Welcome, April Ryan.
And so that concludes Dreamfall chapters. I have to say that when all was said and done, I had mixed feelings about the game overall, but I lean towards the positive in when all is said and done. On the one hand, I was, of course, absolutely overjoyed that Ragnar was able to continue the story, and I was absolutely impressed and pleased by being able to see so many familiar characters again, having the story progress a bit further. The soundtrack was very well done. And I think that there was, for the most part, decent pacing. Although at some point, especially near the end, it seemed a little bit fast. I also liked some of the story twists, such as Roper Clack's learning to build the machine by being trapped in the calculator, and the sudden use of the legend of the Silver Spear of Goramon. On the other hand, though, I will say that it's very clear throughout the game that this project was extremely limited in budget. I mean, it was fun to know that this was a huge chunk of the funding came from the players and the fan base. But not having a very strong financial backing kind of shows throughout the whole project. There's a lot of initial story threads, such as the political intrigue in Propast, and some of the politics in Azadir with the Azadi and their occupation. you have a feeling like they really wanted to get really big and grand in the scope during the first 1 or 2 books. But then as they get to books 3, 4, and 5, you can see suddenly it starts to very quickly narrow back down. And I really think that that just came from the realization of the developers that they just could not go through with the scope of the game that they had originally intended. And that's really sad. But again, it's kind of inevitable with just limited time and funding. So I hope that, and I think Ragnar Turnquist has also stated that he's not going to use this funding model again. While it was fun, I think he also noted all of the various limitations that came with it. You know, it's nice to be able to say that you have full creative freedom when you're independently funded. But if you cannot realize that full creative freedom because of all the doors and walls that you hit because of lack of funds and lack of time, because you don't have as many personnel, a big enough team, you know, you have to ask yourself, is that all that freedom really worth it? So I'm pretty sure that if Ragnar comes back to this world, and he may well do so, it'll probably be with the backing of some company like Funcom again, and he'll probably accept some of the creative limitations with the trade-off of being able to really tell a larger story and being able to get it to the players. So that's kind of where my mixed feelings come from. It's great to visit this world again. I certainly am glad to have participated in the funding as a fan. But I personally hope that next time should he return to this world, that he does so with a much larger budget, so that we can really start to explore some of the open potential that this world has. I mean, there's so many places in Arcadia that we've heard of but never really been to. There's so much potential in the dystopian world of Stark that we could continue to tackle. And even more importantly are the open threads of some of the beloved characters. We know where Kian ends up, being king, but we don't know how he got there, so that would be fun to see. And also to know where he is post-War of the Balance. It would be great to know what happened to April, of course, and her journey with perhaps a reincarnated crow. And where does April ultimately end up? What happened to the dragons? Are they still alive? What are they doing? Is Uncle Galeth really Cortez the Red Dragon, or is he someone else? You know, what... I mean, I guess if I really thought about it, I could come on with a lot more questions, but I guess those are the really big ones that I would like to see followed up on. But as I've said before, the fans have been patient twice before, and twice before they've been rewarded for their patience. So I would absolutely be unsurprised if another 5-10 years down the road we get another game. And I'll certainly be eager to try it out as soon as it happens. So, for all of you out there who have come on this journey with me since the beginning of this game, or even since the beginning of the very first game, thank you for participating in this journey with me. As usual, I'm going to take another break, but then I'll be back with another adventure game. The one I'm thinking of is maybe a little bit more eclectic than some of the previous ones I've done, but I think it'll be interesting. And unlike everything else I've done previously, with the exception of the Yogg Let's Play, it's not going to have any voice acting, so you'll have to deal with my pathetic attempts at reading and limited voice acting, I think. So watch the next series at your own risk. So thanks for coming with me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'll see you on the other side. Until next time, fellow adventurers, take care.
I'm at the end of my rope. I just want you to hold me. Don't just say you love me, show 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 me. I don't even know where to start. I'm just a guy with guitar, trying to make sense of it all. Everything just seems so banal, but there's no need to stay up and ponder. Get out there before it's all gone. I know it's not that easy, such a mind fuck. Oh, believe me, I'm trying to hold on. I'm trying not to let go. I'm trying to keep going. Trying. I still don't really know who I am. After all of these years, goddamn, we're just spinning